Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I am your host, Renee Barron with Quintessential Roots. On Sunday, August 4th, we had a panel discussion on Dolores Cannon's Three Waves of Volunteers. And so our podcast lasts for about an hour, and we ran out of time and did not get to discuss a lot of important parts or points. And so today I'm following up on that discussion, and we're going to highlight some of those points today on the three waves because we weren't really clear on what the three waves were, and I wanted to um, introduce each wave and why it was necessary for them to come. So, on the three waves, there were these three sets of souls that were called to come to the earth to raise the consciousness of humankind, right? And to help awaken people to their true mission in life and to help them to shift back from being stuck in this karma because generation after generation, after decade, eons after eons, people were reincarnating and staying stuck into karma. They weren't learning the lessons that they came to Earth to fulfill, nor complete their mission. So there had to be something done to break that cycle. And so there were um, beings that were asked to come to this planet to help raise elevate these people and to keep them from being stuck. So they willingly volunteered. These were beings from other planets, and yes, they can live on other planets because their frequency is different than the frequency of Earth, and it's just totally different. So um, anyways, there has been beings throughout history that has come and helped mankind, starting with like the corn woman that Dolores Cannon mentioned in her book or her videos if you listen to them on YouTube. And then there was Ra, who became known as the god Ra in ancient Kemet, or you might know as Egypt today, the modern name. There was the Buddha. There was Christ, who you know as Jesus, but was originally Het-Heru, and other beings like that who became known as gods. They were sent to the earth to help mankind to learn to live and to be elevated and to live a certain way. And so the energy of these beings was very needed by the people on the earth at the time. And around the time of the first wave of volunteers that Dolores mentions in her book, it was from the time period of 1950 to 1960. These were people born after World War II. So this wave of beings were sent, and they had a hard time, as she mentions in her book, The Three Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth by Dolores Cannon. So These individuals may have come from good families and everything, maybe some not too good families, but they didn't like people and they didn't understand people and they didn't understand emotion, strong emotions, and they didn't understand violence. And so they didn't like being here. Many of them wanted to commit suicide. They wanted to go home. And even though they might not have known what home is, and sometimes they might not have externally voiced that, but internally that's what they were looking for. Because when we, as hypnotherapists, have past life regressions with individuals, that comes out in the session. And so many of them tried to commit suicide from that first wave. And so there was a need for a second wave of individuals to come. So they asked for volunteers to come again about 1970 and from 1970 to 1960. Now, the second wave of people had it a lot easier because the first wave had, you know, they learned from that wave of individuals. So these people, although they love people, they didn't like crowds. And that's what they were sent here. Their energy was needed in large crowds because it would elevate people, right? But individuals did not like it. They were they were empaths and they couldn't handle the energy of the crowds. They only liked small groups and they liked to work behind the scenes. And some of the individuals loved people so much, excuse me, and was so concerned about world conditions that they were always involved in community events, um, or organizations trying to work towards solutions, because the world conditions really hurt these individuals to their core. And so these beings are actually real live leaders. They're leaders, and people are attracted to them. You know, they walk into the room and the room lightens, you know, and uh, that's the way this wave of people, their energy was. They would change the energy in the room. And this is the wave I identify with. I used to fear large crowds. I didn't understand it. Um, I didn't, also didn't want children. This wave of people did not want children because they didn't want to create karma. I didn't know that that's the reason I didn't want children. I just had a lot of abuse in my family, and I knew I didn't want to bring children into something like that. You know, I knew people repeated patterns, and I didn't want my children to go through any of that. And so, for the longest time as an adult, my family would say, when are you having kids? And I'd say, I don't want kids. And they'd say, you're so selfish. That's selfish not to want kids. And I said, no, it's not. I want to make sure my kids are well taken care of. And I can't guarantee that. And so I don't want kids. And so, but even though I was like always surrounded, like I was the babysitter of the family, I loved kids. I would take care of them, make them happy. My role that I took on was to make the kids in my family happy for the time that they spent with me. And I loved it. And you know, and then I look at my jobs as an adult. Like I started a preschool. I started out with home daycare. I started a preschool. I love those kids were like my kids. And they just loved me. They treated me like I was their mom. And you know, I had a special bond with them and they grew up with me. A lot of the kids came into my preschool and they left and started school. And I would see them on the street and they go, hi. And they would be so excited and they're all grown up. But, anyways, I digress. I'm off the point now. I'm kind of like Dolores. I start getting long winded. I'm sorry. But anyway, again, I am empathic, and large crowds used to overwhelm me because I didn't know how to protect, ground, clear, or protect my energy. And I think a lot of the people in this wave experienced the same thing because I had a fear of crowds. I was fine in small groups because I could read the room, but in large crowds, it was like so overwhelming. It's like I didn't want to be there. So eventually, I learned how to protect my energy and all of those things. Um, but and I have always been engaged. I was raised to be involved with community concerns. My uncle, who was a father figure to me, was a community leader. So I've always been on the front lines or somewhere trying to make the community better or some kind of way. But that is not my role. My role is to simply share my energy to uplift people. And I look back on all of those projects that I've started to try to uplift the community. They didn't really pan out. They didn't work. And it was very, very disheartening for me for them not to work out. But my job was not to be organizing and stuff like that. It was just to bring energy to people. And then I have jobs where I work with the community or in customer service, and they say, talking to you made me feel so much better. And I'm like, all I was doing was being kind and nice. I didn't realize the energy that I was putting off, and so that the person actually did feel better. My energy helped their energy. So that's the second wave of people. The third waves are in their teens to 20s. They're in their early 20s. Now, this group is misunderstood. These are the children that were being subjugated or forced into having medicine for ADHD, ADD, or something like that. Um, when they were in school, they already knew this stuff, and so they were bored and needed some kind of challenge. And so they would get into trouble, or they'd be diagnosed with something that they shouldn't have been diagnosed with. They're highly intelligent, so they had a hard time in school. Now, these beings like to be mentally challenged so that they can work towards solutions, and because that's what they're here to do, is to create solutions. So I'm going to give you an example of this age group of the third waivers because they are young, and I know there are organizations out there that have been formed and they say they're the third wave, but that's not them. They're only in their early 20s, and I know there's organizations and they're all claiming, don't listen to that. These are like young, they're in their teens to early 20s. And so during the pandemic was when a lot of this stuff came about. Um, so during the George Floyd protests, these little young children, the teens and the early 20s, they organized and they demonstrated and they protested in my city, Minnesota. Okay. And a lot of adults tried to, not just adults, but I mean like structures, entities like the police station and the police tried to sabotage the protest, right? But these kids were so savvy during this movement. They had their own media on the ground. They had medics. They had, what did they have? They had medics, media. They had people bringing food. They were so organized, and they were teenagers of all races. They were African descent, Native. They were Asian. They were Latino. They were white. All came together, and they were fighting for real justice, right? And they did more during this protest than they had done during the civil rights and the Black Power movement because legislation was changed just like that. I mean, they exposed plots one by one. They were the ones that exposed, they were being blamed for burning the buildings. It was, they caught the police, undercover corrupt cops on camera with their media and their cell phones, burning buildings, starting the fires. They caught media, mainstream media guys, sabotaging the movement by. There was one media man who played a recording. He had a tape in his in with him, and he played of shooting, and so he got this young kid shot because they thought the movement had turned violent, and they had it caught on camera where they were saying, "You caused this boy to get hurt and shot, and he's in the hospital. He has a family. He has people looking. They exposed him. He was all his whole face was on camera. They were being exposed one by one, and so when they came together, they were a mighty force. They were. I was so proud of them. I was scared for them, but I was very proud at the same time. Now, there was another situation, and I'm just emphasizing the power that they had. Um, in Minnesota during the pandemic, they blocked off every freeway. They didn't want people on the freeway, and especially with the protests, they were protesting during the pandemic. And so every freeway was blocked off. I drove past the freeway they were marching on, and I couldn't get on. You can't get off, and you can't get on without, like, if you had to use the freeway to go to work, you had to have a, a letter saying, or some kind of pass saying that you needed to use it. And so otherwise, you weren't getting on or off. And so there was this semi truck that mysteriously got through the barricades of the police. The police were guarding every single freeway, right? Somehow he got through this big old semi, and the kids were like, they were protesting, and they were filming because they were filming live. So a lot of their protest was live, and you could watch it, and I would watch it every day. And so the semi was coming, and the speed limit is 65, but he was going like 70. And guess where he was running straight into the crowd, like he was gonna run them over. No police in sight. They didn't do a thing. They stayed where they were. And so the kids were saying, "Look at him, look at him." So they were prepared. I was so shocked. I didn't know what was gonna happen. And so I was like, "Oh my God." And then so the semi was going towards them, and these kids were ready. They jumped on top of a moving semi, like they were in X-Men or something. Like I saw teens running in the trailer, and I saw teens on the side of the truck, and they bust out the window, and they grabbed the keys, turned the semi off, and they opened that door and drug that guy out of the truck, and they start beating him down. And that at the moment they pulled him out of the truck, that's when the police started coming and to save him. I mean, arrest him for violating the barricade. And so that was amazing to. I mean, it was like on TV, like it was a TV show. These kids leaped onto. They didn't have no fear, and I was like, oh my God, this is like X-Men or something. But anyways, major legislation was changed. They got funding for black businesses. They made, all kinds of stuff. There was an issue with them not going to hold those police officers accountable, but they went to jail one by one. They camped out in front of one of the officer Chauvin's house in Oakdale. It was something to see. But now Dolores Cannon mentions that part of everyone's being is being upgraded now. And I've read a lot of New Age books that talk about when spiritual awakening starts, you get this ringing in your ears. Have you experienced that? I have. And mine started in about 2008. And okay, I thought, oh, I'm having a spiritual awakening. I was all excited, and I didn't pay attention to the ringing in the air. because I knew that was part of the process. But then 2009, 2010 came and the ringing continued. And I'm like, this ain't got nothing to do with that. That's tinnitus. And I never did go to the doctor for tinnitus, but, and I would say a little after the pandemic, my ringing in my ears stopped. And when I started reading Dolores's book on this ringing in the ear, it started again. So, all this to say is the ringing in the ear, it can be very irritating to you, to experience it. And so, in the book, in the Three Waves book, here in chapter, I don't know which chapter, I didn't label it, but she does teach you a tip that hypnotherapists use in our sessions with people. So while in hypnosis, we have people visualize a dial and turn it down. Some people turn it down to two, some turn it down to one, some turn it down to zero. But for you, you would meditate, get yourself into a meditative state, and then visualize a dial. And you're going to turn it down to whatever you feel you need to turn it down to. Okay? And that's what I think I might have done for myself. I might have turned down the dial to zero. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I probably did. So, whatever feels right for you, go ahead and do that. And she says to recite, I want my body to move up, up, up. And keep saying that until your frequency matches so the ringing goes down. Okay? So, we've read a lot of information about things channeled through clients in hypnosis. Um, and we know that Dolores calls it the SC, but what I know as a hypnotherapist, we have what the psychologists call the subconscious mind. It's childlike, right? It's the things we learn between birth and 8 years old, and all of our experiences are in there. But also contained in there is every single past life that you've had, all of your ancestors' DNA, all of your lifetimes are encased in there. So that childlike subconscious mind that the psychologist talks to, that's the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper, if the gatekeeper does not trust you and you are not worthy to go higher or deeper into the dimensions, you will not get through to the higher consciousness. Um, and I call that the spirit side. So if the subconscious mind trusts you and it knows whether you are trustworthy, then you will not get very far with your clients with hypnotherapy, with Dolores's method. And so rapport is important, but also it has to trust you. And so if it trusts you, then you get to the deeper layers where you can actually speak to higher beings on the other side. And so um, that is some interesting information that I just threw in there. I didn't plan to tell you that. But let's keep in mind that this information was from higher sources of spirit. It wasn't from Dolores, even though she captured it. Okay? Um, and you can feel free to listen or not. But when she gives you information about the diet, and a lot of her sessions have said the exact same thing, and not just Dolores's books, but a lot of other channeled information has said, and with clients that I have seen and heard, your diet. Stop eating the processed foods. Go to foods like leafy greens. Ra says the chewing of the leaves. And so you need to eat plant based foods. Leave the box processed stuff alone. And I know that people don't want to leave meat, but you can intellectualize it how you want to intellectualize it. But the bottom line is the information is coming from spirit, and it's saying leave animal products alone and just eat plant based and try to eat high frequency plant based foods, not like GMOs and stuff like that. So it's your choice. You do what you want to. You can intellectualize how you want to. We have free will. We can do what we want to. But those decisions that you make makes the difference on whether you stay in this system in 3D or you ascend higher to 4D into the new earth. And so it's just suggestions, and you can follow it if you want to. But the book does mention drinking pure water. And the only pure water on this earth is the distilled water now, because most of the bottled water in the store is contaminated with fluoride, except for the distilled water. And you can get a TDS tester and test the water yourself. Even the springs are contaminated because of there's chemtrails and all kind of stuff and pesticides that seeps into the water. It's not pure. So you want to get a distiller or some filtration system to get pure water. Um, Now, again, the book did talk about eating leafy greens and plant-based things, so you want to add those into your diet. Water-based fruits and vegetables like cucumbers, tomatoes, etc. Whole food, plant-based foods is good for your body. Eat less, the book says. Just eat small. Eat less. Stop grazing. Stop eating all the time. You don't need it. Your body does not need it. And being vegan used to mean being healthy, but now it's so commercialized that it's processed junk. So it's not synonymous with being healthy. It used to be, it's not anymore. The next thing the book recommends is to reclaim your power. Take back your power. Stop giving your power away to people. And that means family, your husband, your doctors, your teachers, your experts, your church. Take back your power. It belongs to you. You're responsible for you. Become your own expert on your health, on your wealth, on your spirituality, on your knowledge. You are your own guru, so learn how to be. Stop living by default and let go of the trauma. We all have it. We all have that pain. We have different degrees of trauma. Learn to heal. Do inner child work. Try um, trauma yoga, breath work, meditation, EFT tapping, the tapping. Try solfeggio frequencies. See an alternative medicine practitioner, like a hypnotherapist or a energy medicine practitioner, chiropractor, naturopathic doctor, Reiki practitioner. There's a ton of alternative medicine modalities that you can turn to for assistance to help you with your health journey, your spiritual journey. So, my suggestion is to write down a health plan, write down a life path plan, or your healing journey plan. Um, so pick a modality and begin your healing journey. My specialty is inner child work, trauma recovery. I am going to add child psych, child hypnotherapy, because I've been shown I'm supposed to be still working with children. Um, that's my path, and so I'll work with those kids who may have ADD or ADHD that they say, or maybe bedwetting or any other stress related issues with children. But start eating healthy. Start a healing plan, an eating health, mental health plan. Um, Find out and just plan out how you'll go about it. Seek a professional that will collaborate with you with your goals. Not go against your goals, but go against that will work with you on your goals, because that's part of maintaining your power. And learn to live a chemical free life with your food, with your drinks, with your lotions, with your personal care products, toothpaste, cleaning products, whatever. These are going to be damaging to your mind and your body, especially seeps into your pores. And if you're carrying a child at that time, just imagine what's being transferred to the child. Learn to keep your frequency high. Avoid the news, negative talk, gossip. People get caught up into a negative way of life, or they're stuck into that negativity because of trauma. And I'm not saying to live in duality and pretend like negativity doesn't exist, because you're living in a world that's very negative. And so it just simply means not that we don't acknowledge or we don't see negativity or recognize these things, but you're not going to, you refuse to dwell on that negativity. And you refuse to give your energy to these situations within your own life. And you're going to be working towards creating the life you desire. So you'll be working when you create the life you desire, the one you truly want, then that's working towards this new earth. And so these new babies that are part of the third wave that's being born, a lot of them are the melanated mothers are dealing with disparities during the maternal process. So much so that thousands and thousands of women, black women, are dying during delivery. So much so that legislation has had to be passed to protect these black women during that process. There's a law that was created. It's called the Black Maternal Health Monibus Act of 2021. And I'm going to spell it because it's Momnibus, Mombnibus, Act of 2021. Google it. So a lot of organizations have had to be formed to support these families, such as the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, because they have been fighting against Black maternal mortality. The crisis, it's a crisis, and nobody's acknowledging it on the news, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. So these mothers, these melanated mothers, are dying during delivery, you know, and so it's a crisis, and but regardless of your race, if you are with child in this time, you need to eat clean. Learn to eat clean. Learn to become chemical free. Learn to be a good parent. That means taking child development classes, because that's going to help you understand the developmental stages, and you'll understand your child, and you'll be able to be more nurturing. Now, I have been in the field, and so I know that they're changing the curriculum, and they're adding things based on these children and all of the immunizations that they're having. It's not normal for a child to cry, even when, and that is based off of, look at all the immunizations that these children are getting now. When I was young, there was only a few. When my kids were, they had a little more than I did, and now there's tons of immunizations that babies get all the way till they, that's. I'm not gonna get into a rhetoric against that, but it's a, it's something about that. So that learn child development. Look into some older books too. looking through some of the older books on the developmental stages, and I do notice from reading the developmental stages, they did not fit with my children because my kids um, went through the developmental stages when they were like small babies. So for my kids to stay within that framework, they would have to be like very slow. So learn to help your children based off of what you're recognizing that they're capable of, because those some of the things that they mentioned are for very slow. These children are way advanced now. They're very, very advanced. In fact, they can read you, your energy. You can't fool them. I couldn't fool my kids. And so, also, you want to break the family patterns that have kept you stuck in pain. You want to, yeah, they call them generational curses. Sometimes it is difficult to do this on your own. I have been doing self help since I was a teenager because I knew I needed to heal myself from what I was seeing and what I was dealing with. But that I couldn't because I didn't know how. I didn't know how to work with the inner processes of the mind. And now, as a hypnotherapist, I can do that. I know how to do that. So sometimes you do have to seek out a professional who knows how to rewire and reprogram your brain so that you can achieve the things that you desire. All right. And then also, please learn to feed your children unprocessed and chemical free food and drinks. That means no Mickey D's. Sorry, just cook. You have to cook for your children. And learn to keep yourself and your children in positive spaces and around positive, wholesome people. Now, we did have a view of both the hypnotherapist views from spirit actually channeling to the client. We've The raw material was channeled through a medium as well as the set material was channeled. Now, I wanted to give during our panel a view, an astrological view of what's going to happen. And so we have Braca Goldsmith, and I really want to play this clip because she gives you some information on what to expect in the next one. So we have a comment from, oh, wrong one.
To share with you the next pivotal shift that I've been seeing for some time, but just wanted to meditate more deeply so that I could give you a picture of the energies that are coming up in 2025, 2026. These are really pivotal shift years. Just as we now look back on 2020 and everything that we've all been through globally as a huge shift, especially on the spiritual level, expect 25/6 to take us onto a whole new energetic frequency. So what's coming up? How is it coming up? What are the waves that I'm seeing? And how can we best prepare ourselves on all levels? So it's going to start out in 2023, March of 2023. We've got Pluto going into Aquarius. It's been in Capricorn since 2008. Long time we've seen structures crumbling, government systems, health, education, all the rotten things that are no longer working have to begin to transform. And we get a little taste between March and June of 2023 of what Pluto in Aquarius may mean, because by January of 2024, Pluto will be fully in Aquarius for 20 years until 2044. So this whole shift is heralded around March of 2023 and is heralded by this energy of Pluto in Aquarius. I think we really need to examine what is the message of Pluto in Aquarius? Well, Pluto is about power. Aquarius is the age that we're moving into, the age of frequency, the age of energy, away from the material heaviness of the Capricorn earth, weighed down consumerism, more type of energy. We're having to change our whole system so that it is more equitable and more Aquarian. We're seeing that with all the different diversity of gender. I realize it's a hot topic, but all the diverse identities that are coming out. And you can expect more eccentricity and more oddities coming up with this Pluto in Aquarius. Many oddities that have been hidden and suppressed. ETs, space travel, the development of AI, the development of miniaturization. Pluto rules the things becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. So chips becoming smaller. I think we're going to be dealing with the invisible realms. It's a massive area. I'm going to do a separate video about Pluto in Aquarius because it's such a big area. But what I want to get over is that this energy shift starts with the Pluto in Aquarius. Power to the people. Power for our freedom. Power to be who you are, no matter where you're from, which planet you're from, and to make a contribution that is valuable for the whole. This also frees up new energy, new ways of utilizing our own energy systems that are not as crude and not as heavy. So not so much food, not so much stuff. We are lightening ourselves so that we are able to begin to fly more easily. Then 2025, let me get the exact date, March till October of 2025, we get a little snippet of Neptune going into Aries. And then in January of 2026 until 2038, Neptune is going to be in Aries. Big shift from Neptune in Pisces. So we've had Pluto in an earth sign, Neptune in a water sign, earth and water. This is still an energy of, it's more of a downward energy. Yeah, we've got to use combustion largely to make water go upwards. Water by nature tends to flow downwards. Neptune in Aries, to me, because Aries rules the head, Neptune ruling the feet, we are going to find a whole new generation of leaders. Leaders with compassion.
So that is a little glimpse of an astrologer's view. And so I hope that now you have a more balanced view of um, the three waves, the first, second, and third wave, and the roles. And I hope that you're able to see yourself in one of those waves. So if you have more questions, please leave them in the comments and I will be sure to address those on upcoming podcasts. And thank you so much for joining me. And you have a very lovely